finally completed your new book, Glory, Glory, Glory. So,
Yes. In
um,
fact, it's so new that I don't have a copy in my hands to show you. I have the one on the computer, so that's what we'll be looking at.
okay.
But some people have already purchased it from Teach Services, and I'll be getting my copy in some time.
And,
I sent
I've
some.
got a few questions to ask you about it.
Okay.
And so I want to know what's something unique about this book? What's special about this book? What can we expect from this book that maybe we couldn't really get in other books? You want to share anything about that?
Sure, let me show you. But glory, glory, glory are words that Ellen White uttered as she would go into vision. And so the general focus of the book is exploring Ellen White's early visions. And to do that, we're going to look at her first two books. As we go through this book, we're going to see what I've put into the book. All right. Now, one thing in the title, you'll see in the table of contents, you'll see that um, there's a whole section that was not the original part of my research, but I give a little introduction to the whole idea of her visions and what are the source of those visions, what are the explanations. Many people have different explanations. I compare the different theories and look at what lines up best with the evidence. And the evidence, as I present it and understand it, is that her visions were real and that they were not something that could be explained by naturalistic explanations or even by her own manipulation. Couldn't be that way. So we deal with that. You're not going to find that summarized in other books. Her early life is unique. I took all of the sources of her telling of her experience and put it together in a harmonized account. You're not
Wow.
going to find that in any other book. So you can see the references here. I don't try to break it down in the paragraph, but you can see as she's telling the story, it's coming from different sources, sometimes only one, but I've harmonized it all together and I have illustrated it so that you can see along the way, kind of trigger the imagination to kind of see some things. This is actually a sleigh ride at the time that she was taking a sleigh ride, for example. And so it combines all of these accounts together and it reconstructs, like no other book, the first year following her call to ministry. And so that's absolutely unique for this book. And it's a story, so you can read it, and that's a whole lot more readable than some other things that I've put together. Some of my stuff is resources. Here's
Huh.
something else that's unique. No one had ever before this time been come up with the music, how to sing the sound the Jubilee, which she refers to when she's telling about an incident that took place in Atkinson, Maine.
Wow.
It's a pretty important story about how that Israel Damon was arrested and he was tried. And they sang this song. While I was down in Egypt's land, I heard the Savior was at hand. And so I had to reconstruct this because no book had the music. But I discovered that this particular song had one of its stanzas that was similar to another one, and then I realized that it had been repurposed. It was a hymn that existed prior, and that hymn had music, and so therefore I was able to put these two together. So you can have this, and you can sing this song like these early Adventists did. And so I've got it all right there. That's unique. Other things that are unique in here, well, there are a number of illustrations of people, portraits of people that I have extracted from very poor sources. If you saw this in the original, it looks almost like a photocopy, black and white. So I was able to restore it using software that helped me and also editing skills to bring it together. This is William Henry Hyde, who wrote a song based on hearing Ellen White in vision, and it's about the land that we all would love to go to, Glory Land. So pictures like that are going to be unique in this volume. Lots and lots of pictures, and it's in color. Here is, for the first time, a picture of the house where Ellen White had her first vision. This is Elizabeth Haynes' house. And for years, I searched for this. I found the location, but no photograph of it. And then I finally found this portrait in a book that was written about her. And so therefore I included it, colorized it, and added in. Then fundamentally, what this book does, this is what William Henry Hyde wrote, The Better Land. And it tells the story, and as you tell the story in context, a number of questions that have arisen about this period, about what did they understand, what did they teach, what did the visions do, and how did they elucidate their position. All of that comes into context as you read the story. So that's also there. And let me
It's
find.
got a lot of maps and illustrations.
Oh man, yeah, yeah. And for me, that's what helped to make it real. There we go. That's what I'm looking for right here. This is absolutely unique. Nobody has ever, if they thought to do it, nobody carried through with it. This is Ellen White's recorded visions from 1844 to 1854, the first 10 years of her visions. Nobody's ever attempted to do this before. So this chart is absolutely unique. And what I did was I went through and I located in her writings, in somebody else's descriptions, anywhere that it appeared in James White's letters. I gathered all of his letters for this period because he would mention some visions, and even went to people who were writing against Ellen White, and they would mention when she had a vision that was pertinent. And so I gathered all of these together, put them in a chronological sequence, and each one is identified. Let's get this a little bit larger so that we can see it. There's a numbering of it, a date, if that's been given, location, and also mentioned whether they were in prayer. A number of these visions were while they were in prayer. Each vision has a discrete name, a separate name, an individual name. And some of these visions are visions that have long had a name. Like this was called the Midnight Cry vision, and that's what it was known for. So those names are repeated here, and a brief description of the vision, and then references. Who talked about it? Now, there are a lot of people that talked about her first vision, so this is not exhaustive on that one. But then her second vision, her third vision, and every time it has a name and it has a description and location, so that we're able to try to conceptualize what was it that God was giving in guidance. Assuming, as I do, that these are divine guidance, what was the purpose? What was he needing to nudge the church to do? What was he encouraging them to do? What was he correcting? Who was he addressing? And so with each of these descriptions, afterwards you'll find whether it's a general, or S would be a specific, here's an S, or P is personal. So when you divide up the visions and look at the visions, you're going to get some concept of, okay, this has general application. And the interesting thing is the ones that have general application are the ones that were published in her first books. The ones that are personal, she may reference them, but she doesn't write out exactly what was in there. So here's a personal one. It was to make known the vision to others. That was her second one. And also the third vision, again, was to make known to others, and it was in different context. That was personal.
Now, when you say personal, do you mean that it was for a person?
For her.
Oh, for her.
For her and
Okay.
for her, or for her and James. That would be that category.
But
Now,
the general would be for the church at large?
yeah, for anybody to read. This is a concept. So like the first vision is talking about the people of God going up that pathway to the holy city, and how the light at the beginning of the pathway encouraged them to go forward. And so this is an encouraging message that was for all Adventists, for all Adventists to receive. So it wasn't just for her, and it wasn't a specific message to an individual. Right? But then when we get down to the specific ones, here is something, this is about the cases of believers vision. These are some of the witnesses at that trial that I referred to, and they talked about Ellen delivered specific and accurate descriptions of believers. So there were specific elements to those. Those are not recorded in her book because they were for individuals, not for general applicability. And so this is valuable to reference it, and it also kind of helps us to know where she was, what was she doing, and what was happening within the larger group of believers. So when they started making changes, for example, understanding Christ's ministry in heaven, or as they began to look at the Sabbath, as Bates brought this to their attention, and they studied the Bible, and she had a confirming vision that dealt with the Sabbath. And so it goes on through. And if you follow with me, you'll recognize that she was dealing sometimes with perversions. Some of the Adventists had some fanatical views and fanatical practices that she addressed. And then there were encouragements to open up a new kind of work within the among the group. And sometimes there was a quick message: don't go here. For example, maybe you've heard of Sargent and Robbins. One of the visions that she had, she just describes it, mentions it, but Otis Nichols, with whom she was staying at the time, described what had happened. These two fellows, Sargent and Robbins, came to call at Otis Nichols' house, and as they greeted him at the door, he said, "Hey, would you like to see Ellen and her sister Sarah? They're here visiting." And they didn't want to hear from her. And but they feigned that they had to go do something else. So he said, "Well, how about if we meet this weekend? You know, we can worship together, and then you can meet them." "Oh yeah, yeah, that'll be great." So they set it up that they would meet in Boston. But that night, the night before they were to go to Boston, Ellen White had a vision, and it said, "Don't go to Boston, go to Randolph, opposite direction." Boston would have been north. Okay, if I'm pointing to it, if you're looking at the map, it would have been northeast, but they went southwest to Randolph. And as they arrived there, guess who was there? Sargent and Robbins. And so they couldn't escape it, and they had to see this lady in vision, and she had a lengthy vision at that house. And it's a great story. I've devoted some videos to it. But as you see, put these in context, you now you kind of see, well, what's going on here? And one of the interesting things that I discovered as I reconstructed this timeline is that people were explaining away her visions
Yes.
as being James White having an influence on her.
Mm.
So she came back, and she was by herself. James wasn't there. He wasn't accompanying her on this occasion. So she had this lengthy vision. It had nothing to do with James. So it answered that explanation, false explanation. And that's one of the things that we discover is that in putting these in context, it addresses some of the faulty ideas that people have had about her early visions and about her writings.